Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what is making the headlines with Kevin Maguire and Olivia Artley, both with us from now until just before midnight. Welcome to both of you. So to the front pages then, the Metro to start with, can't cook, won't cook. Metro leading with the words of a Conservative MP who said food banks aren't really needed in this country and that poor people should learn to cook from scratch, which would mean make meals a lot cheaper. Same lead for the Daily Mirror, which calls the comments by Lee Anderson a slur on the poor. The Telegraph goes with Boris Johnson's announcement that the UK would send troops to Finland or Sweden if Russia ever invaded them. The Times also making that story its front page lead. UK troops will defend Scandinavia, they say. The Guardian highlights a new scientific report which claims that oil and gas companies are planning what it calls carbon bombs, major new projects which threaten to make the climate crisis worse rather than improve it. The Financial Times leading with a threat from the EU to retaliate if, as feared, the UK government rips up the post-Brexit trade deal for Northern Ireland, which it says has triggered alarm in Brussels and Washington. Well, a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages while you watch the programme. So let's introduce our guests then. Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor at the Daily Mirror, and Olivia Artley, Assistant Comment Editor at the Telegraph. Welcome to both of you. So let's go to the Telegraph to start with then, shall we, Kevin? This flying trip from Boris Johnson to those parts of Europe that had so far not joined up to NATO, and crucially one, Finland, which has an 810-mile border with Russia. So what did you make of that visit today, and what came out of it?
Yeah, it's signing the Nordic Pact, committing Britain to back both countries who've invaded by Russia, even if they're not in NATO. Both are considering joining, particularly the Finns, and suggesting, the Telegraph say, that he could send British troops, which I think would be a major step. And you could ask why not to Ukraine in that case, if he's prepared to do that, which would concern me. But it is where Putin has already lost, because Finland has been neutral since the Second World War. Sweden hasn't been in military alliances for 200 years. And now both are looking to NATO and closer ties with other countries because of what's happened in Ukraine. So it's backfired spectacularly on Putin. Also on the front of the page of that Telegraph, it's quite interesting to have that picture of him in the boat with the Swedish Prime Minister, Swedish opposite number, Magdalena Andersson. I'm surprised anyone would get in a rowing boat with Boris Johnson, but it just shows you the power of a stunt, because their pictures may not be on the front page if they hadn't been in that boat. But Johnson did tweet saying, look, they're now both in the same boat. But it's a big encircling of Russia. Whether it makes countries safer, I'm not absolutely certain it does.
Yes, we are literally and metaphorically in the same boat, was the tweet by the Prime Minister, certainly. The Times is another newspaper leading on this as well, and they are pointing out that the President of Finland is expected to approve his country's application for NATO membership tomorrow, all very swift. And the big defence, of course, is that Russia, you drove this to us. And these two nations are historically, in fact, from Sweden's point of view, for 200 years, historically neutral, aren't they, Olivia?
Yeah, and it's ironic, of course, because Russia claimed that it was invading Ukraine in the first place to stop Ukraine joining NATO, which was always incredibly unlikely. And now you've got Sweden and Finland both moving to join NATO, and Finland really quite seriously. I think, it would seem nonsensical for NATO to not accept Finland's proposal, because Finland still has conscription. It could add a lot of expertise and an awful lot of soldiers to the NATO forces. So, of course, there's the danger that it'll poke the bear, but the bear already seems to be very firmly poked. So it looks as though Finland, and possibly Sweden too, which with its history of neutrality, as you say, is quite astonishing, could soon be accepted into NATO. And that means that Russia would have a NATO border all the way from the Arctic to Turkey. So Russia has been encircled, and it's Vladimir Putin's own fault.
Well, the picture of that signing with the Finnish president makes the front page of the Financial Times. Their lead story, though, moves on to what to do about the border in the Irish Sea. Brussels, again, this paper reporting threatening retaliation if the so-called Northern Ireland Protocol is ditched. It seems, we're not there yet, seemed to be the message from ministers today. But they're not backing down from taking radical action. Is this just to appease the DUP and those unionists who are not happy with this, or is it simply unfair that the system is not being used as it was intended by the European Union, Kevin?
Well, Boris Johnson negotiated the deal. He hailed it an excellent deal. Lord Frost, who now criticises it frequently, who is his Brexit negotiator, he was there. He hailed it as a great deal. I think in part with Boris Johnson, it is to appease Brexiteers on his own back benches, who have his survival in their hands. If they turn on him in demand, he is gone. The DUP itself in Northern Ireland, it's lost the election for the first time, 101 years since Northern Ireland was created. Now the Nationalists came out on top with Sinn Féin in the election. They've paid a huge price for backing Brexit back in the referendum in 2016. The only major party in Northern Ireland did, and Northern Ireland voted to stay within the European Union. So he can try and appease the DUP, but the DUP's got very little leverage now in Northern Ireland. And the position is, from the DUP appears to be, and Jeffrey Donaldson who effectively stated this, that they won't nominate a First Minister, Sinn Féin, until the protocol is gone. Well, I think there's some willingness on the European Union's part to renegotiate the application of it, but it has to be in a more constructive way than the government regularly threatening to rip it up.
Well, Jeffrey Donaldson from the DUP, speaking to Sophie Ridge a short time ago here on Sky News, said, "We agreed it in good faith, and the EU have pursued a really legalistic interpretation." I suppose the principle for them is that they want to have a check on items that are heading from third-party countries into the European Union, which, of course, is what happens with that free border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, Olivia. So that's always been the rub, has it not?
Well, Britain has always made it clear that it's going to ensure that the EU can preserve its integrity without the Northern Ireland Protocol. It could all just be wrapped into the TCA. That's what Britain has been proposing all along. And I mean, to say that this is just placating the DUP is not true. Clearly, Northern Ireland is not functioning properly at the moment. There are businesses all over Northern Ireland that have massive problems with the protocol as it is now. And the DUP, I mean, I'm sorry, but the DUP does still have huge leverage. Wasn't a nationalist walkover in those Northern Ireland elections. If you take all the unionist vote put together, which was very, very split, then, we're looking at equal numbers. If not, the unionists had the slight edge. And also the DUP can't appoint the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister work together in Northern Ireland. That's under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. And without the DUP, we can't have a functioning government. So basically, the province is completely at a standstill and something has to be done. The government's offering everything it can to the EU to try and make this work. The EU is not budging at all and is proposing this enormous retaliation. And it's hard to see what Liz Truss can do other than exactly what she's doing right now.
Well, we will certainly see what happens with that story, but let's move on to effectively a cost of living crisis story with a new twist, obviously, in the Metro. A Tory MP has insisted there is little need for food banks, instead blaming people who cannot cook and cannot budget. This is Lee Anderson. Kevin.
Yeah, he is on saying meals can be made for as little as 30p. I think the Metro's got the wrong headline there. Can't cook, won't cook. They always like their little puns and plays on words. But I think representing the fury at Anderson would have been more relevant here, because the Trussell Trust is giving out more than 2 million food parcels a year. There was a report by the Food Foundation a few days ago showing 2 million adults in Britain now don't eat every day because they can't afford it. There is a real cost of living crisis. The government acknowledges that. But Lee Anderson used to be a Labour councillor. He's now gone over to the right of the Conservative Party. He likes to shout his mouth off. Of course, he, made himself a bit of an idiot during the Euros when he said he wouldn't watch England play because players were taking the knee. Well, I'd like to know if he really kept that all the way up to the final and didn't watch any of it. He said he didn't, but I wonder if he sneaked a look at the TV now and again. I think he's just speaking from absolute ignorance.
Well, the Daily Mail also effectively going on what to do about, well, A, how to raise funds, and B, how to then distribute them. There you go, Rishi warms to an energy windfall tax plan. There's always been a sense of that, hasn't there? And in fact, what to do will be the subject of an away day cabinet, is our understanding, in the Midlands tomorrow. The Financial Times is also quoted as reporting the government is prepared to announce a new support package to help shield households from a further jump in energy bills, suggesting that Rishi Sunak will make an announcement in August, around the time when the energy regulator prepares the next price cap. But is it safe to say, Olivia, that something will be done?
Something will be done, but what the government seems to keep doing is these sort of away days, or there was a brainstorming session the other day where they talk about measures that might get a bit more money into the Treasury, and it all seems to be sort of stopgap solutions. There doesn't seem to be a sense that the government sort of has a big plan. And you've got, we saw some pages from inside the FT earlier, and one of them was Robert Shrimsley article saying that the only thing that the government can do now, the only thing that's left to do is to lower taxes, which does seem to be the sort of elephant in the room. All of these small handouts to people to help them pay one gas bill at a time isn't exactly a strategy, and it's all just sticking plasters. It can't really last for very long, and I don't think a cabinet away day is going to solve it. A proper Conservative government offering to cut people's taxes, well, that might make a bit of a difference.
Growth figures for the first 3 months of the year to be released by the ONS tomorrow morning. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, to the Daily Telegraph, Kevin, and there'll be a crackdown, we understand, on children who are skipping school in the wake of the COVID pandemic. This is Nadeem Zahawi writing in the Daily Telegraph.
No, I'd like to see the detail of how this will actually work, but there's no doubt there was a big problem. The Children's Commissioner for England recently said that there's something like 2 million pupils who missed about 10% of schooling in the autumn, and that is a huge problem. And because some kids stopped going to school, they haven't got into the habit of going back, and their parents, carers aren't making them do it. It's a serious problem, this, because a lot of education's been missed over COVID. If it continues to be like this, they're going to really struggle in later life in every respect, including the jobs market. But tackling truancy has been a government policy of governments of all colours for a long time, and of course attendance records are part of Ofsted ratings. So schools do take it seriously. Local authorities take it seriously. I just want to really see what he will do that is actually different to what's being done now. So
the trial of the, what word to use, not sure. But anyway, the trial that is ongoing, double-page spread in the Metro. You know, this is all manner of fodder for all newspapers everywhere, is it not, Olivia?
Yeah, it's a really brilliant trial. I'm particularly enjoying some of the court sketches are just great. They really sum up what's going on in the room. You feel like you're there. There's some great stuff there on the Metro about Peter Andre. I think it was Vardy saying that something about him having a chipolata, it being used as her not respecting people's privacy. It's everything you could possibly want in a celebrity court trial, all in one go, basically. And enjoyable to read, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, well, indeed. Well, I mean, you know, she's in tears in the court. Let's caveat it with that, shall we? But this is all about whether or not she effectively let a newspaper know information, and you know, even the evidence on that is fascinating, Kevin.
It is, because of course she denies leaking stories about Rooney. She says she didn't do it. However, there's messages come to light that she wanted to leak stories about another footballer, Danny Drinkwater, after he had a car crash. She says it was only a fleeting intention, never intended, but they didn't want to be paid by the Sun for it, which in the event said they'd heard the story from the police. But it's a real case. And I watch it, and it may not make me a good man to be enjoying other people's misery, but you watch this, and it is like a theatrical show, a farce. It is a reason why don't sue for defamation unless you're absolutely clear of your grounds and the case, because Rebecca Vardy is in the stand and is on trial as much as Colleen Rooney. And she hasn't come out of it well, in my view. You can say that because of the nature of the case. It was a criminal case, we couldn't. But it's absolutely riveting. We've got more than a week of this to go. It's great, isn't it?
Let's move to the bottom of the front page of the Daily Telegraph, which is the idea that in St Ives, visitors face a fee to spend a penny. This is tourists, but also owners of holiday homes, which the paper says shows the difficulty or the anger, the hostility towards those who have taken up some of the property in the area.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, this real culture war that's going on in Cornwall. My father-in-law lives in Cornwall. I spend quite a bit of time there, and the amount they hate tourists is getting a little bit out of control, and second homeowners are just as bad, if not worse. And you can understand how some of the people of somewhere like St Ives feel, because these second homeowners all come down for the holidays and then they disappear and leave these areas as ghost towns for the rest of the year. On the other hand, Cornwall does get a lot of its its economy is basically based off tourism. So to drive out all of the tourists would probably be a mistake. But there really is a very serious culture war going on down in Cornwall between ordinary Cornish people who've lived there all their lives and the huge brigade of sort of, Fulham decamping to Cornwall every summer, every Christmas, etc. And it's hard to see how it's going to end happily, especially if us poor Londoners aren't allowed to go to the loo when we go down to Cornwall.
And a quick minute, if you don't mind, on page 7 of the Metro, the Minister of Silly Talks, Harry Enfield's 1990s sketch show deployed by him today.
Yeah, Michael Gove, the levelling up or levelling down secretary, using a Scouse accent and an American accent in an interview, and Lisa Nandy, his Labour shadow, coming on after and saying, "Look, this isn't again." Do you know what? He's under a lot of pressure on now, but this is weird. I thought when he was dancing badly in an Aberdeen club, it was rather endearing, but to a cost of living crisis which is huge and people are suffering,